Hello and welcome to this week's Facebook Live, where I'm talking about the blog post that I put up on Monday, which is about making the right arrangements for your children when you separate, in terms of what that routine will look like, how you manage that routine, and things like that. Before I start, I just wanted to say a couple of things. In 2 weeks' time, on Friday, the 12th of October, there will be no live because I'm away at a workshop. I'm away at a conference, and I'm doing a kind of informal chat session with other lawyers and mediators at the Resolution DR conference. And if you're another professional and you're going, really looking forward to catching up with colleagues and talking about lots of things to do with helping couples who separate make the experience as positive as it can be. So that's one thing. Secondly, if again, this is kind of more for professionals at the moment, but I'm putting together my training program for 2019 and the events that I'm going to offer, and it will be a combination of seminars and workshops, some shorter, some longer, but it's also going to include some networking events for any professional that works with couples who separate. If you would like to be involved in any of those, then please drop me a line by email, is usually the easiest, louisa@lkwfamilymediation.co.uk, because I want to offer training and networking that's helpful to people. And unless you ask people what's helpful to them, sometimes you don't know. So please drop me a line. I'm going to be sending out a MailChimp soon with a little survey for other professionals that will be focusing on when it would be helpful to have training, what kind of topics it would be useful to put into seminars, and when the best time is for you to attend them. So please do fill out that survey. It'll also be out on social media links as well. If you do want to be on our mailing list so that you get details of all the information that we send out, if you're going through a separation at the moment and you'd like help managing that, then to sign up to our free mailing list, go to bit.ly/LKWFamMedList. Or if you're a professional who works with couples who separate, then please sign up to the list by going to bit.ly/LKWFamMedSignup. And that will take you through to the list. So let's get into this week's live. When you separate, what arrangements should you make for your children? And this is something that I think people can get concerned about, as to whether they're doing the right thing or whether there's any rules, or whether they can make things work. Sometimes I think there's ideas about what would be really good for the children, but then people worry that it will be too difficult to manage, and then they try and have something simpler. And, you know, it's something that is really difficult. I've talked before about lots of people say to me, oh, we don't know what to do here. And if you've never separated or divorced from your husband, wife, partner, then why would you know how to go about it? You know, these are not things that anybody would get told. So it's perfectly okay that you may feel concerned about what happens, confused about what the right thing to do is. The most important thing is that there is no law or guidance or anything that tells you what arrangements for children will put in place. There's nothing that says it must be every other weekend, it must be during the week, you must spend half of the time with one parent, half of the time with the other parent. There is no rule. All there is all that's set in law is that every child has a right to have a relationship with both parents. And that's going to look different for pretty much everyone, because the routine for your children has to work around them and their needs, and the arrangements that you might make for a toddler of, say, 18 months old may not be the same arrangements that you make for a 16-year-old teenager. And also it has to take into account other things. You know, if you've got a child that is a very keen gymnast who does gymnastics 5 times a week, then it may be that your arrangements will need to work around that. Or it may be that you need to accommodate work arrangements. There are some days that you work really late and can't be home earlier, or there may be other days where you can be, or you can work from home. And all of these things will feed into what a routine will look like post separation. And lots of people get hung up on lots of different terms, and I still hear the word custody and the word access being used, even though those haven't been used as legal terms since 1989. And the reason they stop being used is because they are really emotive terms. If you stop for a moment and think about your children and think about the word custody and think about the word access, it kind of suggests certain things, and those things are not helpful and they don't reflect the modern way of thinking about things. After access and custody, we had residence and contact, which were slightly better in that they were maybe a bit less emotive. But something that I have said for a long time is that if you're a parent and your children don't live with you on a permanent basis, they come and stay with you, you want to do things that are fun and enjoy a loving relationship with them and deal with everything that comes up, whether it's moments of joy, whether it's moments of sadness, whether it's moments of anger, and you want to play a meaningful and important role in your child's life. And the word contact doesn't really encompass all of those things. So as far as the law is concerned, what we now have are what's called child arrangements orders, which is, entirely what it says on the tin, arrangements for children. In mediation, I talk about when the children are with mum, when they're with dad, and when, for whatever reason, they might be with somebody else, grandparent or a nanny or childminder, whatever. But to me, I don't think it's particularly helpful to get hung up on different terms. I think the most important thing when a couple separates is to look at when will the children be with mum and when will they be with dad. And for most people, having a clear routine in place means that everybody can then plan. It means that children know that on this day we're going back to mum's house, or on this day we're going to go to dad's house. And it means that parents can look in the diary when you're planning work commitments, social commitments, other appointments, and know when the children will be with you. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't occasionally be any flexibility or that you might not need to move things around to accommodate things. But generally speaking, having a broad pattern in place can be helpful. That pattern looks different to different people. So, for example, for some people, they may always have the same pattern in place. So, for example, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, children are at mum's house, Thursday and Friday, they're at dad's house, and the weekends alternate with them being at mum's house one weekend and one dad's house another weekend. And I'm using that very much just as an example of something that in no way means that's what anybody should be putting in place. It's just an example of arrangements that could be put in place. So there could be that structure in terms of days, and occasionally mum and dad might swap days to accommodate the fact that one or other of them is away with work, or there's a social event that they want to go to, or something like that. For other people, that doesn't work. And in my head here, I'm particularly thinking of people who work shifts, because their shift patterns change, so they couldn't have a situation where they always have the same days because shift patterns move on. So sometimes for people, they have a routine that's in place for a certain number of weeks or months, and then it changes round. Again, it's all part of a structured routine, and the structure is there, and everybody is clear about when the children are with mum and when they're with dad. It doesn't matter how you structure your routine, it just has to work for both of you and for your children. And if you are struggling to know what to put in place, then it's really helpful to have a discussion about it so that you each understand what everybody's trying to juggle in managing the routine, and talk to your children as well as to what might be important to them. And I think it's really important to stress here that I don't mean go to your children and say, you need to decide whether you live with mum or dad, because clearly that would be a horrendous situation for a child to be put in, knowing that they had that power and that they had to choose, and they may potentially upset mum, upset dad. Talk to your children about the fact that you need to put a routine in place once you've separated, and decide when they'll be at mum's house and when they'll be at dad's house, and ask them what it's important to them to have there. And you may need to structure your discussions or your wording, change your wording depending on the age of your children. But it's really important to understand, often children have very basic concerns about whether all their things, how will their things go between houses, or what will their bedroom look like in each house? Will they be able to bring their teddy to and from? All of these things I have seen crop up in discussions between separated parents. And if you understand what your children's concerns are, then it's much easier to put in place a routine that will enable you to reflect those things and to accommodate those things. And sometimes there may need to be a bit of trial and error. You try a routine and then you come back to it in a few months' time, or whatever feels like the right time frame, to see how it's working. And when I did my blog on the top 5 tips, the last one was review, and that's something that I will be coming onto later in this series. But it may be that you need to try a few things to see what happens. The other aspect to routines for children following their parents' separation is how you manage that routine. And that kind of means various things in my head. The first is how you know what days the children are with mum and what days the children are with dad. Where you've got a routine where there are set days with each parent, then that's easier because you know that if it's a Monday they're with mum, or if it's a Wednesday they're with dad. But where you've got a pattern that changes to accommodate shift patterns or other issues, then you both need to be really clear about what's happening in the diary, when it will change. And it's really important for children to be absolutely clear about when they're going to be at mum's house and when they're going to be at dad's house. It's unsettling not to know where you're going to be going to sleep that evening. So it's important that everybody is clear about what the routine is, and they know when they're going to be at mum's house, when they'll be at dad's house, and looking ahead to the week. Well, I'm going to be in my bed at mum's house for the next 2 nights, and then I'm going to be in my bed at dad's house for the next 2 nights, whatever your routine is. But it's really important that you are all certain about that. And different people manage things in different ways. There are online tools that exist to help couples who separated to manage things like that. Or you can simply use an online Google Calendar that you both have access to, that you put things in. Or sometimes people are not particularly enamored by or embracing of, or sometimes people are just scared of technology and they have an old-fashioned diary or a calendar. Whatever your system is, and you don't both have to use the same system, all you need is that you are both absolutely clear about your routine for the next few weeks, months, however you work, and you are both clear about when children will be with mum and when children will be with dad. The other part of managing the arrangements for children is managing the stuff. So for school-age children, if a PE kit comes home to dad's house on a Wednesday and then children are back at mum's house on a Thursday and they've got PE on the Friday, has that PE kit gone to the right place? Silly things like, will children just have clothes at mum's house and clothes at dad's house? Or will they be packing a bag when they go to and from? Again, this is something that your children may have a view on it, and talking to them about it. Some children really don't want to be packing a bag every time they go between houses, and it can be much easier for them to just have clothes at mum's house, clothes at dad's house, toiletries at mum's house, toiletries at dad's house, toys, and there's just a few favourite items or a tablet or something like that that goes back and forward with them. And one of the things that I think I see a lot of is one parent perhaps being concerned that they will be the person that manages all that. And sometimes in a relationship, there is just one person who is more organised and they end up being the person that sorts all the arrangements out. In my experience, I think it's unhelpful to set cast iron rules about anything. The important thing is that it needs to be managed. And however you arrange to manage that, as long as you are both comfortable with that, then it's unlikely to be wrong. If you've got a situation where one person is seething with resentment and has steam coming out of their ears, then that's probably something that needs to be addressed, because they're not feeling happy with it. And if they feel that resentful and angry, then those feelings are likely to spill out into other areas, and it's something that needs to be addressed. If you find it hard to address those kind of issues between yourselves, sometimes people don't want to open a can of worms, I suppose, for want of a less cliched expression. You know, they think if they start unpicking things, it's going to go horribly wrong, and they've just got to a point where actually they're able to manage things with each other. Or if they talk to each other about this stuff, it ends in a big argument, which isn't very helpful. And that goes back to some of the things that I was saying in the first tip in our series of 5 about communication and how you can manage that. So do have a look at that, because that gives some helpful tips. Mediation is also a really helpful way of bringing together a couple who've separated to help them structure their discussions, help them keep on point. And mediators like me have lots of experience of dealing with these situations. So often we're able to suggest things that you may not have thought of or heard of that will enable you to deal with the different issues that are coming up about managing the arrangements. So I hope that that's been helpful in talking about this topic. Next week, the blog will be out on Monday, talking about the importance of arrangements being child-centred. And then I'll be going live on Friday to talk about that. And next week, the lives will be back to the usual time of 12 p.m. So thank you, and have a great weekend, everybody.